Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with another podcast topic about hip hop, of course, as I usually do. I wanted to discuss Saturday night's versus of Cash Money versus No Limit. Now, this was on, well, I know I watched it on Apple Music. They had a live broadcast of it with Ebro, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name, but they had some great commentary beforehand and post performance of the verses, the legendary verses of the two groups that I wanted to see the most, two groups I grew up listening to, two influential groups that came out of New Orleans and that changed the whole rap scene as far as the South goes and in general as well. Both have done major things that influence other artists that, whether it be inside of New Orleans or outside of New Orleans, but they influenced the whole culture, especially hip hop wise and what they were able to do. So it was a great night for any of the 90s raps, hip hop heads. And it was just a great night altogether. I think it was a little bit underwhelming, in my opinion, for a couple of reasons, and I'll get to those. Growing up listening to both of these groups, listening to the bootleg tapes from the flea market, those bootleg tapes that had the printed off. You could tell somebody printed off a printer, and they had the horrible graphics. You could barely see the graphics sometimes, but you got the music and you enjoyed the music. So this music hits differently when you grew up in that era, of course, as most people would say. But I think it was a little bit underwhelming for these couple of reasons. First, there was no Lil Wayne. Now, I didn't expect Lil Wayne, but I kept leaving out a little hope that Lil Wayne would be there because they kept referencing Lil Wayne, and then they even played one of his songs um, at the end. They played it a milli, so I'm thinking he's gonna come out with some surprise verse, and I'm gonna scream out like a big kid. But unfortunately, he never did. So I'm not sure if Lil Wayne had a prior engagement because I do believe he's on tour right now, or is there some kind of tension? Well, Birdman probably would have said it because of what he said about Turk. So I don't think there's any tension. I think they're on good terms, but for some reason he didn't show up. So it was underwhelming in that way. Uh, but the highlights, I think, of everything that went on. Oh, and another thing, another reason why I think it was underwhelming is because they ran out of time. It was only about an hour or so, which I expected it to be like 2 hours. These groups have a lot of hits. And when they initially came out, I want to say the first two songs, they actually performed the whole songs in its entirety. So I was like, wow, they're going to play all of these songs. Well, it's going to be a pretty lengthy verses because if you're playing all your songs, you're going to be playing songs that are 4 minutes apiece. Both groups are going. It's going to go on for a while, but it didn't turn out that way. They started doing one verse here, started doing choruses and things like that. So it got kind of disorganized at the end. And they even said at the end they only had 4 minutes left, and they performed like felt like four songs apiece, which was kind of crazy. But nevertheless, I think that the performances should have just been longer. They had so many more songs that they could have possibly done. But nevertheless, I was excited as a fan to see it. But what I was shocked about this whole versus thing is that Mia X and Juvenile were the standouts for the groups. Now, I expected Juvenile to be the standout, especially with Lil Wayne not being there. But Mia X was an X factor, no pun intended, of the whole No Limit group because I believe if Mystical was there, Mystical would obviously had big hits and he would have made gave her some running for it. Master P has pretty much all of the hits for the group. So I expected him to do the same as well. And of course with Snoop Dogg coming out, but he only came out for one song at the very end. So it was kind of exciting to see him as well. Most people didn't realize he was a No Limit soldier, which Snoop did give Master P always gave Master P the credit for his resurgence in his career when he was on a downside, and he's been up ever since. But I think that Mia X, if you listen back to the music from No Limit, she was an integral part of what No Limit was doing back in the '90s, and she goes unnoticed. But in this verses, she made us realize that first it's just not about the hits because we can listen to the hits and make decisions on our own. It's about the performances. and Mia X definitely performed at a high level um, doing this performance. So rapping, her breath control, and she's 55 now. As I looked it up, she had the breath control, she had stage presence, she had all the different things, and I think she still, if she puts out an album within the next couple of years, I think that'll be interesting to see what the reception will be because a lot of people slept on Mia X. And this generation, of course, doesn't know about Mia X, which I'll talk about in another segment that I'll be releasing pretty soon, or probably already will release once I release this one. Just talking about Mia X's importance to Lil Kim and influence that she had on her. And I'll talk about that, like I said, in another segment. But I was very surprised and uh, uh, excited about what Mia X did on performance because she really was a standout. Breath control, stage presence, just remembering the lyrics from that long ago and all the things that she's been through. So kudos to Mia X for what she did for the battle last night because she had a Jada Kiss type performance at the Verzuz last night. Well, Saturday night, I should say. But Juvie had a lot of hits on stage and he had all the stage presence and he pretty much carried Cash Money, with the exception of Still Fly with Birdman and Manny Fresh, which Manny Fresh doesn't get enough credit as well. The amount of music and great production he has done for Cash Money and for Cash Money artists and even other artists like T.I. and people like that he's done over the years. And he was a very integral part of what Cash Money did coming up during those years. All of those 400 degrees beats and pretty much every beat he was doing, he's very similar to RZA, not in production, but for what he did for a large group of artists and being able to produce all these tracks for these artists for so many years. Also, um, I felt like Back That Thing Up and Make 'Em Say On didn't get enough play for what they meant to those groups. They should have had a lot more play. It should have been even some encore, especially on Back That Thing Up. But even when when I looked at the crowd reaction, I didn't see excitement like I would thought I would have seen. Especially on Make Them Say, I didn't even realize they were performing it until shoot the song was damn near over because they didn't they didn't have that much excitement. There wasn't that much rowdiness on stage. Of course, these guys are older, but it was one guy on the stage that was just bouncing up and down, pause, throughout most of the performance. But those songs didn't get enough recognition or enough play or enough pizzazz when these songs were performed, and that was a little bit underwhelming for me. But I do, like I said before, I think if Mystical was there, it could have been even worse for Cash Money because without Wayne, I don't think it was. I mean, it wasn't close to me. But I'll go through my scoring. So the first round was 400 Degrees versus um, No Limits True Song. I picked, of course, Cash Money in that one. Juvie's performance carried that whole one. But the next one was Still Fly versus Break You Off. I picked Cash Money, Still Fly. Manny Fresh and Birdman did an exceptional job. It sounded just like when they recorded back in the 90s or early 2000, whenever it was. And next round, I had Project B versus Freak Ho. I picked No Limit. The in that round. Second round was Cash Money's and Army versus Bourbons and Lax. I picked No Limit just because of the performance piece. And I never really liked Cash Money as an Army song. It was okay, but it never was my top. But the performance is what I picked. Then next, I picked it was Slow Motion versus I Can Tell. I picked Cash Money Slow Motion. Juvie's performance carried that one as well. Bling Bling versus It Ain't My Fault. I picked No Limit. Then Set It Off versus Ice Cream Man. I picked Cash Money. And then next I picked number one Stunner versus Bout It. Bout It, I picked No Limit. Then Roll On versus Make 'Em Say of course, No Limit. I Need a Girl versus Chopper Style, I picked No Limit, which the Chopper Style song is an underrated song that's in No Limit's discography that a lot of people don't really talk about enough because it's very New Orleans bounce type music. But it is one of their greater hits or essential hits that they have. But I did have Cash Money. I mean, I had No Limit winning this battle 6-4. just off sheer performance because it's not about the songs with verses, it's about the performance and the crowd energy that you can bring. And I felt No Limit brung a little bit more energy than Cash Money did, especially with Lil Wayne not being there. But once again, No Limit was missing Mystical and C Murder because they're both incarcerated right now. So they did miss two important parts of their puzzle that they had, but they still had a lot of performance. And I think it was mostly carried by Master P as well as Mia X mostly. And also Lil Romeo didn't even perform, which he had a couple songs that he probably could have done, but it wouldn't make sense for this battle because Lil Romeo's not beating any song that Cash Money has. But tell me how you think the verses was scored, and until next time, I'll see you next time.